Okay, we've talked about the two commercially available tools. Now let's talk about Metasploit. Metasploit is completely free. It's an open source tool released under the GPL. It was formerly called Framework, and it also has modules that are written not so much in Perl, not so much in Python, but in Perl. Actually, Python is related to Perl, but Perl is what the framework was based on, and so Metasploit is as well. It has a collection of very, very useful scripts. It has a shellcode library generator, so it can generate on the fly the shellcode and the libraries that it uses to infect and exploit. It's got strong exploit development libraries. In other words, you can develop your own. It's easy to extend and add new modules to, whether they're ones you downloaded from a security site or one that you created on your own. Cygwin bundled in for the Windows install, which is Cygwin is a client that essentially gives you a bash shell for a Windows 32 environment, and it supports multi-stage payloads so that you can exploit on multiple levels and put many different exploits in a single payload. It's also got an interface that is a sort of terminal graphical interface. It's a menu-driven in the terminal interface. It's not GUI as we would come to think of from the other two tools where it's a point and click. It's at a console window, but it is not just adding commands. It's actual more of a sort of menu command-driven, as we'll see. There are three user interfaces. One is that command line interface that I spoke about. The second is the console-based client, which is more of a sort of menu-driven, as we were talking about before. And then finally, there is a web-based, non-graphical, but through the web browser interface. It's graphical through a web. There are helper scripts and programs like MSF, that's the framework PE scan, a local opcode scanner. It's got many different plugins and scripts that you can use. Okay, so when would you use the command line interface? It's useful when you need to script Metasploit. It's fully functional just at the command line with this sort of usage of MSF CLI space ID space var or the value name, the variable and the value of that variable, and then the mode that you're going to exploit. So that's the sort of syntax that you'd use. You'd use the command MSF CLI Metasploit framework client or command line interface, Metasploit framework command line interface space ID space the variable and its value that it has to define, and then perhaps a mode that you're going to run it in. Here are some of the other modes, and they are summary mode, which shows all the various information, options, advanced, payloads, targets, check, and exploit. And they all have different functions. The exploit one is where you actually attack another system. This is from the command line now. Here's the web-based version. It's a bit more point and click. You do have to have a web server to run it, however, so it's not the most used interface, but it is much simpler to use. You can see there's actually a shell in a web browser window, and it's an extremely slick setup once it's up and running, but it does require quite a bit more configuration. And then there's the console-based. This is with the sort of menus that I spoke about in a console window. It's flexible. You can use the tab completion for ease of use. There's logging and access to environmental variables, and there's also a history as well. And if you can see it there, you've launched the program, and now you're in the MSF prompt. Now you're in the MSF prompt where you have this, you're sort of driven through. You can say use, and then tab your way through a list of commands. You can type the first couple letters and tab your way through, and then it will take you to the next prompt, which is almost as if you've changed to that prompt and now you're in a different setting. You have a completely different set of commands. So the command there was use real server described Linux. You went to then the the MSF real server described Linux prompt, then you set, and then the variable payload, and then there's what the payload is going to be. So you've moved into that prompt now, the MSF real server described Linux x86 bind, and now you're going to set the port. That's the local port. You're going to set the remote host in the next variable, and then you're going to give it the keyword exploit, which means go and do it. And here it is: real server universal exploit launched against this IP address. Kill the master RM server process ID to prevent the shell disconnect. Going through it, it's connecting, it's done, and that bash-2.05b is on the remote host. That is mission successful, and here we have a remote shell to the target.